Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing my Sephora VIB sale recommendations. The sale is happening on Friday for Rouge members, but I'll go ahead and leave all of the details in the description box for all of the different tiers. But I'm going to be sharing all of my makeup favorites in today's video, so let's go ahead and get into it, starting with foundation. This is actually my #1 favorite foundation of all time. This is the Nars Light Reflecting Foundation, and I have this in the shade Medium 1 Punjab. This foundation works for me no matter what my skin is going through. It's very lightweight, very thin and liquidy. It doesn't feel like I'm wearing any foundation on my skin, which I do tend to prefer that. I don't like that heavy feeling, and it looks so beautiful and radiant, and it doesn't get too greasy on me either. I do have oily combo skin with some dry patches, some dehydration, so this foundation just works for me no matter what. I have yet to find anything that's as good as this one. Even some of my other foundations just don't quite compare to the NARS one, so I highly recommend this one. And they do seem to have a really good shade range as well. The Lancome Teint Idole Ultra Wear All Over Concealer, this one I have in the shade 250 Bisque W, and this one has been a favorite for a couple of years now, but for some reason I just haven't talked about it much on my channel. I don't know why, it just hasn't come up very often, but this is one of my all-time favorite concealers, and this is the only one that I'm recommending from Sephora. Not that I don't love other concealers from Sephora, but this is just the best one in my opinion. But this one I love because it's very lightweight. It has so much coverage, but it also looks natural on my under eyes. And no matter what my skin is going through, kind of like the one from NARS, it just always looks good no matter what. It's a very thin and serumy consistency. It also wears really well, and it doesn't crease excessively on my under eyes. So I actually have 3 cream bronzers to recommend, and all 3 of these are my favorites. This one is from NARS. This is the bronzing cream in the shade Laguna 2, which is the original shade. And what's interesting is that the powder Laguna bronzer didn't work for me. I didn't love that shade on me. It just looked a little muddy and almost yellowish, but this shade works perfectly for me. But besides the shade, I love the formula because it dries down to a bit of a powdery finish, so I feel like it's just really easy to apply. I don't feel like I spend a lot of time blending it. It kind of just blends itself, not literally, but it feels like it does because it's so quick to apply. I'm wearing this one on the left half of my face, and then on the other half I'm wearing the Tower 28 one. I'm trying to find it. This is the Tower 28 Scluptino in the shade Getty, and this one is beautiful as well. It's a little bit balmier, I would say. It doesn't dry down to a powdery finish the way that the NARS one does, but it also doesn't stay tacky. It just looks a little bit more dewy, but it does dry down eventually, but it leaves a really pretty finish. This one is also really easy to work with, but this one, like I said, I have on the right half of my face, and honestly you can't tell much of a difference. I can't tell in my mirror. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but the finishes end up looking pretty much the same, even though this one is a lot balmier and it almost looks a little bit dewy. Maybe the one from NARS looks ever so slightly warmer toned, but they're both pretty neutral. But I just love both of these. I really can't pick a favorite. Like if I had to, I don't know that I'd be able to choose a favorite from both of these. And then I also love the Nudestix Nudies Matte All Over Face Bronze Color in the shade Bondi Bay. And I love this one just as much as the other two, especially because it comes in a stick. I feel like it's easier to use when I'm in a hurry because I can just swipe it on and then blend it with a brush. I especially love this one for work because it lasts a really long time on my skin. And like I said, it's quick to apply, especially when I'm in a rush. It really comes in handy to save like a few extra seconds. This shade is definitely a lot warmer than the NARS and the Tower 28, but I love this one, especially in the summer. It works for me year round, but there's something about it in the summer that I love the most. But this one has been a favorite for a couple of years, and I think I actually tried this one long before the Nars and the Tower 28 one, but if I could just have 3 cream bronzers for the rest of my life, I think I would stick to these 3 right here. Okay, let's talk about my favorite cream and liquid blushes. And I really tried to narrow it down because I do have a lot of favorites, but these are my all-time favorite ones. It was really hard for me to choose. But first up, the Rare Beauty liquid blushes. I don't think we're surprised. A lot of people love these. And this one I have in the shade Virtue, and this is in their dewy finish. I thought this was limited edition, but I did see it on the Sephora website today actually, so I'm guessing it's not limited edition anymore, or maybe they still have it in stock. It hasn't completely sold out yet, but this shade is just the perfect peachy beige. I am wearing it on my cheeks today, and I just love the dewiness. It is really easy to apply, even though it is very pigmented. I do like to apply it either on the back of my hand or on my palette. That's actually what I did today. It's just easier to control how much product I apply, but this formula is just really pretty on the cheeks. It is dewy, but it doesn't feel sticky, and they do have quite a few shades. I do have a bunch of minis, but this is the only full-sized that I have in my collection, and this is probably my favorite shade out of all of the ones that I have. I only have one of the Patrick Ta cream and powder blush duos, and this one is a really pretty brownie sort of bronzy shade. This is in the shade She's So LA. The cream blush is very balmy, so it does leave a really pretty dewy finish. And I do like the powder blush, but I don't use it quite as much as the cream part. I do reach for it every once in a while, but I'm mainly sticking to the cream part. I love this shade because it's a peachy bronze, and I don't feel like I have anything quite the same as this shade in my collection. It's just a very unique blush shade. So I really want to try the new one called Not Too Much. I keep seeing it all over my feed on YouTube, and I really want to pick it up during the sale. And then I also love the Nudestix Nudies Matte All Over Blush Colors. This one in the shade in the nude is a really pretty nude peach. So I love this one, especially for every day and for work. And then Picante, which I would say is my favorite one. This one was created by Alana Davidson. It is an orange, but it looks super flattering on my skin. I was a little intimidated when I first purchased this, but it just makes my skin look healthy whenever I wear this. And they're pretty much the same formula as the bronzer stick. They are matte, so they do last a long time on me. I only have one setting powder to recommend from Sephora, and this is the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Baking and Setting Powder in the shade Pound Cake. And this one I like to wear in my T-zone. I don't really wear this all over my skin because it does have a tiny bit of brightness to it. I wouldn't say this is completely translucent, so I do like to wear it underneath my eyes and in my T-zone, and it really controls my oils throughout the day. I would say this is the most heavy-duty setting powder that I have in my collection, and it's very reliable. Even when my skin is going through a lot of flakiness or dehydration, it still looks good on me, even though it's so matte. But it's not matte to the point where it makes my skin feel tight. It's just the right amount of mattifying. So this one is a holy grail powder for me. I really want to try one of the new shades. I think it's called Peach Pie. It's like a slightly peachier powder. So I might pick that one up during the sale, but Pound Cake is a really good shade for me. Let's move on to some powder bronzers and blushes, which I don't have as many of compared to cream and liquid blushes and bronzers. I just tend to stick to creams and liquids for the most part, but these powder ones really stand out in my collection, especially these from Pat McGrath. I have the Skin Fetish Divine Bronzer in the shade Bronze Dawn and the Skin Fetish Divine Blush in the shade Desert Orchid. Both of these powders look so beautiful layered over top of cream and liquid blushes and bronzers because they both have a glowy finish to them, but they're not so glowy to the point where they emphasize my texture or they look like a highlighter. This is the Skin Fetish Divine Bronzer in the shade Bronze Dawn. I feel like I could go maybe one shade up, but it is pretty buildable, so it does show up on my skin nicely. I think in the summer I could benefit from going at least one shade up, but it's just a really pretty formula. It doesn't skip in any areas and it never looks patchy on me. It just blends so beautifully on my skin. It's such a smooth powder. And then the blush in the shade Desert Orchid is just the perfect peach on me. Again, it has that glowy finish. So this layered over top of the Rare Beauty blush in the shade Virtue looks so beautiful. I am wearing these today. I don't think I had layered these together before. I've layered the Pat McGrath blush over top of other cream and liquid blushes, but for some reason I hadn't paired it with this Rare Beauty one, and it's honestly my favorite now that I'm wearing both of them together. I rarely ever wear powder highlighter anymore, but every once in a while I do find some really good powder highlighters, and this one from Give Beauty has become one of my all-time favorite highlighters in my collection. This is the Check My Glow Multi-Dimensional Illuminating Highlighter. I have this one in the shade Platinum Cowgirl. I love this one because it has a bunch of different shades that I can mix and match. Whenever I'm doing a pinkier look, I like to stick to the pinky tones. And then whenever I'm doing something more warm toned, I like to stick to the champagne and gold shades in here. It leaves more of a pearly finish on the skin. It's not quite as blinding as some other highlighters, but I love that about it, especially when I want to go a little bit more subtle. I feel like it doesn't emphasize too much of my texture and it just lays on the skin really nicely. The Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer is a longtime favorite. Unless you have extremely oily eyelids, I feel like this would work for you. I feel like I have oily eyelids overall, but this one does keep my eyeshadows in place all day long, and I don't ever get any sort of skipping with this primer. There are some eyeshadow primers that, even though I like them, they can be a little bit too tacky at times. So certain eyeshadows might grab onto the eyeshadow primer, but I never have that issue with this one. So if you have normal to dry or slightly oily lids, then you might end up liking this one. It also leaves a little bit of a tint, so it does give a tiny bit of coverage. Speaking of eyeshadows, I do have two palettes to recommend, and this one is the one that I'm wearing right now, the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. This is my go-to, especially in the spring and summer, because you get a lot of warm and rosy tones in here. So you do get some mauves, but you also get some warmer tone shades. It does come with a couple of cream eyeshadows, but I honestly don't reach for those that often. It's not that I don't like them, but I just don't reach for cream eyeshadows all that much. But these shimmers are just so beautiful. I am wearing two of the shimmers on my lids. So I do have this one on underneath of this one. I hope I'm pointing to the right one, but I have both of these layered together. They have such a beautiful shimmer to them, and they almost have a bit of a duochrome shift to them. They're not completely duochrome, but they do have some multi-dimensional shimmer in there. And then the mattes are just super rich and buttery. I feel like whenever I use this palette, I don't have to spend too much time doing my eyeshadow because I don't have to do too much for it to blend out. So this is one of my all-time favorite palettes. The tones in here are just perfect. And then this one from Anastasia Beverly Hills, the Nouveau palette. This is another favorite of mine. I love this green packaging. The tones in here are very rich, and this formula, even though it is a little bit different from the typical ABH formula, I feel like it's a little bit easier to work with than something like the Modern Renaissance palette. It doesn't seem to have quite as much kick up, but again, the shimmers in here are gorgeous and the mattes are really pretty as well. This palette is very rich overall, but you do get a little bit of a pastel color in here with the purple, and that one is really pretty as a one and done shadow. I have worn that all over my lids by itself, and I think it looks stunning. I have two setting sprays to recommend, and this one is a classic, the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. This one I love because it keeps my skin looking pretty matte overall, but it doesn't make me feel like dehydrated. A lot of setting sprays, especially if they have denatured alcohol, can make my skin feel a little tight, but this one, even though it does do a good job at mattifying, it never leaves a tight feeling on my skin. So it's just a solid go-to for me. I've been using it for years. It's just a classic that I feel like you really can't go wrong with. And then same with the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish setting spray. This one isn't quite as matte as the all-nighter. I would say it leaves more of a radiant finish, but it does lock in my makeup, and I feel like this makes my makeup last all day long. I'm actually wearing both of these today, so I did apply the Charlotte Tilbury one first, and then I went in with the all-nighter, and I feel like my makeup is not going anywhere. It's gonna last all the way into the night. I'm pretty sure the one from Charlotte Tilbury doesn't have any denatured alcohol. I think that's why it's not as mattifying as the all-nighter, but it does an amazing job at locking in my makeup even without the denatured alcohol. But these two are staples in my collection as far as high-end setting sprays. This product I am definitely stocking up on during the sale. This is the Rare Beauty Perfect Strokes Mascara. This one is technically expired, but I wanted to use it for today's video to show you what it looks like. But this is my all-time favorite mascara. I haven't found anything that's quite as good as this one. I do have some other favorites, but this is my number one favorite and the one that I've repurchased the most. It's volumizing, it's lengthening, it doesn't flake or smudge on me, which is rare for a mascara. So I am gonna pick one up during the sale. Okay, let's talk about some lip products. These are also from Rare Beauty, the Kind Words Matte Lip Liners. And right now I'm wearing the shade Wise. And this is a peachy brown shade. And then I also have the shade Gifted, and this is more of a reddish brown. I love these lip liners because even though they are creamy, they have a little bit of a stiffness to them, if that makes any sense. I feel like they don't rub off easily off of my lips. So they do wear a long time on me, and I especially love pairing these with the matte lipsticks, and I have these in the same shades. So here is the shade Wise. This one I have over top of the Wise lip liner, and they pair perfectly. The lipsticks are a little bit lighter than the corresponding lip liners, which I actually love that about them. I feel like they pair perfectly because of that. I usually like my lipstick to be a little bit lighter than my lip liners, so I love that they did that. And then here is the shade Gifted. This is a gorgeous reddish brown shade. Again, it pairs perfectly with the corresponding lip liner. And I love the fact that the lip liners are retractable. I don't mind having to sharpen my lip liners, but there's something really convenient about a retractable lip liner. So it's just a bonus in my opinion. And the lipsticks have a beautiful matte finish. And even when my lips are super, super dry, I don't feel like they emphasize the dryness or the lines on my lips. They're just really comfortable. They look really flattering. Another lip liner that I love is the Makeup by Mario Sculpting Lip Pencil, and I only have one shade. This is the shade Toasty, and this is just my perfect pinky brown shade. I love this kind of pencil lip liner. It is a matte finish, but it goes onto the lips really nicely. I don't feel like I need to tug on my lips to get it on there, even though it is a bit of a drier formula. And what's really interesting about this one is that it does have a brush on the other end. And I do use it every once in a while, especially when I wanna wear this lip liner all over my lips. I kind of just like buff it all over. These signature lipsticks from Merit are some of my favorite lipsticks in my collection, and I like the fact that these are buildable. You can layer them on to get them to look more opaque, but one layer will give you a sheer finish. This one in the shade 1990 I especially love in the fall because it is more of a grungy brown shade. And then this one in the shade Slip is a neutral nude shade. I like layering these over top of lip liners, but I also like them on their own, especially because they do go on a little bit sheer. The Fenty Beauty Gloss Bombs, I have a bunch of different shades in these, and most of them are minis. I really only have one full size, but unfortunately it is limited edition, so I didn't want to include it in today's video. But these two are permanent shades. This one in the shade Fussy is a really pretty pink, and as you can see, I have used it quite a bit. I do keep this one in my purse for the most part. Every once in a while I do keep it in my makeup collection, but this one is usually in my purse. And then Chocolate Fantasy, I would say this one is my favorite one besides the original Fenty Glow shade, which I did go through a full size a few years ago and I haven't repurchased it since, but I am tempted to repurchase it. I don't know if during this sale, but maybe eventually. And I like the fact that these both have shimmer, but it's really fine shimmer, so it's not gritty on my lips whatsoever, and they're just very hydrating. So the Fenty Gloss Bombs are a classic. Okay, so that is it for all of my makeup recommendations, but I do have one sort of like random thing to recommend, or not so random because it is beauty related, but the Nars pencil sharpener. Who doesn't need a good pencil sharpener? And this has been my favorite for years now. I've had this for a really long time and it still works. Honestly, I've probably had this for like 6 years at least, maybe a little bit longer, but it sharpens all of my lip pencils and my eyeliners perfectly. I have struggled in the past with some other sharpeners. They just don't get it quite right, but this one never fails me. So I just wanted to throw that in there in case you need a really good pencil sharpener. Let me know if you're planning on picking up anything during the sale or if you're planning on skipping out on the sale for whatever reason. And if you have any recommendations for me, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. But I will see you in my next one. Bye.